How's it going, folks? Son of Virginia here. Yeah, no fancy mass today. Uh, Weather's horrible outside. And, anyways, let's get into it. The other day, President-elect Trump stated that he was going to sign an executive order declaring cartels as terrorist organizations and put the full might of the military behind the effort of completely degrading their reach and their operations. For one, I think it's a good idea. Uh, I can get into some reasons why I personally think that it hasn't been done before in another video. Because this video, as far as this video goes, I'm just gonna walk through like step by steps of the what his why is and his justification for doing it, what it may look like. Uh, and the legalities of what it will look like and repercussions of it. Alright, so that said, let's get into it. Using special forces uh, through an executive order against the cartels, declaring cartels as foreign terrorist organizations or FTOs, and authority to designate FTOs or foreign terrorist organizations. The president has the authority to declare any group as FTO under Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Title 8 U.S. Code 1189. This process typically involves the Secretary of State, who must determine the group meets certain criteria of engaging in or having the intent to engage in terrorist activity, threatening United States nationals or United States national security. The implications of this: the designation criminalizes United States-based support, allows the U.S. government to block assets, and enhances cooperation with international partners, uh, including the FTO designation in the executive order. The executive order would state that each identified cartel meets the certain foreign terrorist organization criteria, and given their significant threat to United States citizens and stability at the border, the executive order should direct the Secretary of State to formally designate these organizations as foreign terrorist organizations and communicate this to the relevant international bodies and allied nations, namely Mexico. Pretty much, telling them that we're coming and this is why. Okay, and while we're going to send the military, it's going to take the military because of all the corruption and deep influence that the cartels have inside the Mexican government and across the borders. Well, like, do I think that we can do it? Absolutely, yeah. And under executive order authority, and outside of an authorization for use of military force, they're limited to 60 days. And I completely believe in the capabilities of our Special Operations Command and the personnel within, and I don't believe it wouldn't take that long to completely degrade their capabilities, much less their infrastructure. But authorizing what gives the president authorization to use the military, even with an executive order, is to use the military that we all know about. National Guard, active military. He'd have to incite in Title 10 of the U.S. Code, and Title 10, Section 333 provides authority for the Department of Defense to assist foreign security forces in counterterrorism operations, and the executive order could direct that support. Intelligence sharing and equipment are extended to Mexican forces as part of an authorized counterterrorism partnership. Section 127E permits the Department of Defense to support foreign forces or irregular groups in counterterrorism operations, and this could apply to redacted mission if Mexico's forces assist or operate alongside U.S. forces targeting foreign terrorist organizations. The big chunk of authorization and where the meat and potatoes of everything that's going to be done is where that's at is under Title 50 of the U.S. Code, and that's where the CIA, some certain agencies and some certain units within the DoD operate underneath Title 50. I'm not going to mention any unit names or anything like that. If I refer to anything like that, I'll probably just say task force. Outside of that, not even the posted acronyms that are online. No names. We'll just say no names. Anyway, Title 50 under U.S. Code and War and National Defense. In Section 413B, covert actions. That's what everybody wants to hear about anyway, right? Redacted operations often operate under Title 50 for classified operations, particularly those involving covert or clandestine aspects. The executive order would need to authorize redacted to conduct covert operations while requiring reporting to congressional intelligence committees for oversight. Section 1541, War Powers Resolution, WPR. The executive order should reference the WPR, acknowledging that the president's action is a limited deployment to meet an urgent national security threat. The executive order would commit to reporting within 48 hours, describing the need, U.S. military action to mitigate this threat. Alright? So Title 10 and Title 50. Title 10 gives authorizations for, I say, 7th group to go in and start working with non-cartel personnel in order to build a type of resistance, or at the very least a covert intelligence network that the cartels wouldn't have access to. And when you get into operational security and all this, and like from personal experience, I would recommend that all of this, if this was to take place, that we operate from the United States and nowhere near the interior of Mexico. Just purely out of operational security reasons, because money talks and tax-free money screams, right? So, moving on. Now, how the executive order would be framed and mission types and the objectives of those mission types. Overall objective, the executive order would authorize redacted to conduct operations specifically aimed at degrading and dismantling the cartel's infrastructure, financial networks, and leadership. The objectives should be measurable, such as neutralizing key personnel, cutting off supply routes, and crippling financial operations. Rules of engagement should be outlined consistently with counterterrorism operations and international law, focusing on minimizing civilian harm while allowing decisive action against cartel infrastructure and leadership. And the diplomatic and international legal considerations. A request for Mexican government consent. While the executive order will direct the United States forces to operate within Mexico, it should include provisions for seeking cooperation within the Mexican government, including a potential status of arms agreement, which underneath Title 10, that would say how many forces we're going to deploy, where we're going to deploy them, how long they'd be there, things of that nature. To to outline the legal status of United States forces on Mexican soil. Yeah, and therefore, if we operated from the United States, there wouldn't be a status of forces agreement. There wouldn't be the need for one of those. Well, that's not 100% true either, so don't quote me on that. And justification under Article 51 of the UN Charter, the right to self-defense. It should cite in Article 51, the executive order, stating that the cartel's cross-border violence and smuggling activities constitute a direct threat and justifies U.S. self-defense actions if consent from Mexico is not secured or if joint actions delayed. And that's what I'm leaning towards, because what I'm seeing in my head play out is the same thing that played out at Tora Bora, for instance. Like, yeah, you don't want your operations to evolve to that and then degrade all the way to square one within minutes, pretty much. So, yeah, that's why I say, if it's going to be done, and it can be done effectively, it needs to be done from, like, cross-border ops, so to speak, from U.S. soil. And I know that's hard to do. You've got to have some form of intelligence coming from the ground. You can't launch a team of super ninjas based just solely on, say, drone footage, for instance. You have to have a corroborating form piece of intel that goes along, because nobody's going to authorize an operation off just one sole source of uncorroborated intelligence and put U.S. soldiers in harm's way. No leadership I ever come across that would do that. Anyway, moving on. Congressional notification and oversight of the executive order. Because even though it could potentially, in my eyes, hopefully be a unilateral operation, maybe progress towards Title 10, towards bilaterally, or, we could start to turn the tables on the cartels. But, anyway, we'll get there. The executive order would mandate immediate notification of congressional leadership with detailed briefings on the mission's objectives and rules of engagement and compliance. If operations extend beyond 60 days, congressional approval would be required. The executive order should ensure ongoing reports to Congress documenting mission success, casualties, impact on civilians, financial expenditures, etc. Right, so like I said before, with the executive order and authorized use of military force, they're limited to 60 days. And I completely believe that the mission can be accomplished within that time frame. What I'm more worried about, we'll get into later towards the end of this video, and I'll make another video about it also. And it actually all coincides to the exact point of why I'm here making these videos for y'all in the first place, even though hardly any of you is watching them. Anyway, moving on. Coordination with other federal agencies and the role of the Department of the Treasury. The executive order should direct the Secretary of State to work with allies to gain diplomatic support and potentially join operations. The Department of the Treasury would be tasked with freezing cartel assets globally and targeting any linked financial networks. They bring out the daggone, what they call them, the forensic accountants. Yeah, the guys look up and tell that you stole a French fry when you was 3 years old and your aunt was working at McDonald's or some shit, because the McDonald's books came up light or some shit that month, way back in the 80s or whatever. Those guys, forensic accountant is like, the IRS's version of the Army super ninjas. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're wizards. There's wizards with numbers and shit. Anyway, intelligence sharing with other agencies. The executive order would outline intelligence sharing protocols between the Department of Defense, CIA, FBI, and DHS. Streamline identification and targeting of cartel assets. And it also, the executive order also, set operational limits and success metrics, saying, all right, you can go after this dude, you can go after that guy, but you can't go after these people or these buildings, and this particular set of infrastructure is off limits, so to speak. Clear mission limits, including criteria for success, would be essential. The executive order should articulate that the mission aims to severely limit cartel influence and infrastructure, ultimately withdrawing once key objectives are met. Minimizing collateral damage to mitigate legal risks and protect United States-Mexico relations. The executive order should mandate, redacted, operates under strict guidelines to avoid harm to Mexican civilians, requiring detailed reporting on civilian impacts. So, there you have it, folks. There's the basic outline of the steps that President-elect Trump are going to have to take, and what the executive order will kind of look like for you folks that are still might have some questions with it or might be worried about it. Like I said, I'm not worried about the executive order when and if it actually comes out and happens. Matter of fact, if I wasn't as old as I was, I'd probably go try to re-enlist. Because, I mean, that's where I get, not to say too much about my first lifetime, but out of high school, that's where I got my start. Like, my second deployment ever was, it was in a jungle, we'll say that. So, yeah, if I wasn't so old, I'd probably try to re-enlist, just because I believe it could be done. I believe it could be done effectively, and I could believe it could be done inside the 60-day window. However, I have different thoughts and different concerns when it comes to the consequences of said actions and repercussions on common, everyday, regular civilians as I am now, just regular old folks like you and me. Because if you think you could live in BFE, middle of nowhere mountains like I do, and if you think the cartels don't have influence and their fingers don't reach over into your pie, I got some beachfront property in Arizona I can sell you, because I live where I live, and yeah, like I mentioned in the previous video about that torchlighter, with the proliferation of methamphetamine and THC dabs in this area, like, the torchlighters are right beside the Bix, but they have to restock the torchlighters at least once a day. So, yeah, I completely believe I believe it would be successful if the executive order was to be signed and executed. But going back to the sole reason that I'm here, my concern is with the repercussions to the American people and civilian population that are here in the United States. And moving forward, like, I hope that you'll continue to tune in and like and subscribe, and just, even if it's just to listen to me rant about stuff, I'm ranting about some good intelligence, some good information that it never hurts putting that little wrinkle in your brain. I mean, we're all Americans here anyway. I feel a lot better knowing that people like my mother, for instance, have a good idea of some things they can do just to keep them safe and maybe, you know, live to protect another day. But yeah, that's why I'm here. I just want to make sure, and this is my way, I guess, of talking to my family members and being able to make sure I can be there, and they know, you know, they know the things that I know, or at least can understand some of the things that are being talked about in a better way to where how they can apply it to them in their own lives. But anyway, there's my rant. So I'll make another video about going into what possible consequences of this executive action could be on us regular folks here in the United States. And I'll make another video going into why, like I said in the beginning of this one, why I believe that this hasn't been done sooner. It hasn't been done before. There's just too much dark money in it, and circulating into the black economy. But we can get in that in another video. Son of Virginia,